When you hear the word Viking, what do you imagine? Perhaps towering warriors in horned helmets, longships cutting through icy waters, fierce raiders storming the coasts of England, and men who lived only for glory. It's a powerful image. It's the Viking legend we've been fed for centuries. But the truth is far dirtier. Behind the sagas of honor and conquest lies a world of filth, brutality, strange customs, and human suffering. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on the Vikings, not as myths but as messy, flawed, and shockingly human. This is the dirty history of the Vikings. Step aboard a Viking longship. The air is thick with sweat, smoke, and animal stench. Men are packed shoulder to shoulder, some rowing until their palms bleed, others crouching beside livestock brought for food. They eat where they sit, relieve themselves over the side, and try to sleep through the stink of unwashed bodies. Forget the romantic images of clean, noble warriors. Viking voyages were floating cesspits. And yet, compared to their medieval European neighbors, the Norse had a reputation for being oddly clean. They bathed once a week, an outrageous luxury in the Middle Ages. Steam baths, rivers, and hot springs became their sanctuaries. Archaeologists have uncovered tweezers, razors, and even ear cleaners in Viking graves. To outsiders, these raiders were vain, grooming their hair and combing their beards. English monks complained that Viking men were stealing local women, not with swords but with soap. And still, that soap was made of animal fat and ash, leaving them greasy and smelling faintly of burnt pig. And if their bodies weren't foul, their food often was. Imagine waking up to a breakfast of sour milk so rotten it could curdle your stomach. Lunch might be a hard slab of bread, ground so poorly that sand and grit wore down your teeth. By Middle Age, many Vikings had cracked jaws, infections, and abscesses from years of chewing stone-filled flour. Dinner could be salted fish, stale meat, or worse, fermented shark. A dish so rancid it was buried in the ground until it rotted enough to eat. Even today, it's considered one of the most revolting foods in the world. To Vikings, it was survival. And then there was the drinking. Mead, beer, and wine flowed endlessly in the great halls. Feasts could last for days, and drunkenness was not only common, it was expected. But Viking ale was not brewed with modern cleanliness. It was thick, inconsistent, and often contaminated. Some batches led to fevers, vomiting, and even death. Still, the Norse drank without restraint. Their sagas tell of celebrations that ended in chaos, where one insult, shouted across a firelit hall, sparked bloodshed. Ale, warned one Viking poem, is another man's undoing. And yet, the mugs never stopped pouring. Entertainment was never far from violence. Vikings played games with dice made from animal bones, gambled away fortunes, and competed in strength contests. Their favorite board game, Nefadafel, was a battle of strategy, but sagas tell us it wasn't always peaceful. When tempers flared, axes were drawn. Victories were written in blood. And sometimes entertainment turned macabre. Skulls were carved into drinking cups. Human bones became ornaments and tools. For the Norse, life and death mingled freely, even at play. And in their bedrooms, or more often in the crowded halls, the Vikings carried little shame. They spoke of sex in open jest, wrote crude poems, and carved obscene images into wood and stone. Women could hold surprising power here, able to divorce a husband who mistreated them or failed to provide. But not everyone had freedom. The enslaved, taken from raids across Europe, were often forced into sexual servitude. They were property, not partners. For all the sagas of fierce Viking independence, countless lives were stripped of choice and dignity. And slavery was not the dirty little secret of Viking society, it was the backbone. Raids across Ireland, England, France, and as far as Russia captured not only treasure but people. Entire villages were emptied, families ripped apart. Dublin became a hub of Viking slave markets, where men, women, and children were sold like cattle. Some were forced into farm labor. Others were traded across the Mediterranean for silver, silk, or spices. To the Vikings, wealth was measured not only in gold, but in human chains. And yet, it was not just their cruelty that shocked their enemies. It was their rituals. Take the dreaded blood eagle. Sagas describe victims pinned down, ribs cracked open, lungs pulled out to form wings across their backs. Was it real? Some historians doubt it. Others argue it was practiced, if rarely, as a spectacle of terror. Whether myth or fact, the idea alone was enough to make Viking enemies shiver. And it wasn't the only punishment. Thieves might be enslaved. Traitors drowned in bogs. Some criminals were mutilated, obscene words carved into their skin. Justice was as creative as it was cruel. And yet, for all their ferocity, Vikings were fragile. Their skeletons tell of arthritis in young men, broken bones that never healed, and malnutrition in children. Parasites infested their guts. Lice and fleas plagued their hair. They carried diseases that scarred their skin and shortened their lives. Despite their image as fearless warriors, the average Viking might not see 40 years. Most did not die on the battlefield. They died of hunger, sickness, or infection from wounds too dirty to heal. But death to them was never the end. To the Vikings, how you died mattered more than how you lived. A peaceful death in bed was shameful. A violent death in battle promised entry to Valhalla, Odin's Hall of Heroes. And so, even as they wasted away from disease or hunger, they told stories of warriors charging into glory, shielding themselves with myth from the dirt and the pain of their real lives. So why, centuries later, do we still worship them? Why do television, games, and books paint Vikings as almost godlike? The answer lies in the sagas, the stories they left behind. Written not in dirt, but in poetry. Not in sweat and stench, but in tales of honor, glory, and conquest. They erased the filth, the parasites, the slavery, and the cruelty. They left behind legends, and we, centuries later, chose to believe them. But the dirty truth is this: the Vikings were not gods. They were not monsters. They were people. They laughed and feasted, but they also stank and suffered. They conquered, but they also enslaved. They were brave, but also brutal. They built a world of trade, war, and exploration, but also of hunger, filth, and pain. And perhaps that is what makes them most human of all. Behind the glory, behind the sagas, behind the myths of shining heroes lies the true story of the Norse. A story of blood and mud, of lice and ale, of love and cruelty, of filth and fire. This is the real legacy of the Vikings. Messy, brutal, and unforgettable.